John Carter wiped sweat from his forehead and stared at the screen again. The numbers didn't make sense. He had checked the equipment 3 times already. "Lisa, can you come look at this?" he called over his shoulder. Lisa Wright pushed away from her workstation and floated across the cramped control room of Mining Station Bounty. In the low gravity, her movements were graceful despite her bulky work suit. "What's wrong?" she asked, gripping the back of John's chair. "These readings from DC 405. I've never seen metal concentrations like this." John pointed to the glowing orange sections on the scan. "The computer says it's platinum, gold, and something it can't identify." Lisa's eyes widened. "That can't be right." She leaned closer. "Run it again." John tapped the commands, and they watched as the scan refreshed. The results were the same. "We need to tell the boss," Lisa said. 3 hours later, they sat in the station's conference room with Daniel Adams, the corporate liaison from Pansolar Industries. His clean suit and smooth hands showed he had never worked a day in the mines. "You're certain about these readings?" Daniel asked, his eyes gleaming with interest. "I checked 5 times, John said. "Whatever's in that rock, it's worth more than our annual quota." Daniel nodded. "Headquarters is very interested. They want us to push DC 405 toward Earth orbit for full extraction." Lisa cleared her throat. "There's something else. I found strange crystal formations that don't match any known mineral profiles. We should study them before moving the asteroid." Daniel waved his hand. "Study them after we secure the asset. The board wants this rock moving within 48 hours. He stood up. "I'll inform the crew. Get your team ready, Carter." After Daniel left, Lisa turned to John. "We're moving too fast. Those crystals were giving off energy readings." "Energy readings? From a rock?" "Not like any rock I've ever seen," Lisa said. "We should be careful." But careful wasn't in Pansolar's vocabulary when trillions of dollars were at stake. For the next week, the crew worked non-stop to attach mass drivers to DC 405's surface. The massive engines would slowly push the asteroid toward Earth over several months. John supervised the final installation from the control room. Through the viewport, he could see the asteroid. A dark, potato-shaped mass speckled with the lights of workers and equipment. Paul Mitchell, the communications specialist, sat beside him. "Mass drivers are online and ready," he said. "Just waiting for the go-ahead from Earth." The station's radio crackled. "Bounty Station, this is Pansolar Command. You are cleared to begin asteroid redirection. Full thrust authorized." John took a deep breath. "Activate mass drivers." The engines flared to life, their blue glow illuminating the asteroid's cratered surface. For several minutes, nothing seemed to happen. Then, slowly, the tracking data showed DC 405 beginning to move. "We did it," Paul said, smiling. "In a year, we'll all be rich." Later that night, John found Lisa in the geology lab, examining a small crystal under a microscope. "You're still worried?" he asked. Lisa looked up, her face pale. "These crystals are growing, John. They're absorbing energy from our equipment." "That's impossible. I know what I'm seeing." She pointed to her screen. "And there's something else. The energy signatures are changing, becoming more organized." "What does that mean?" "I don't know. But pushing this asteroid might be the biggest mistake we've ever made." That night, as the crew slept, the lights in the station flickered. Deep within DC 405, something ancient stirred from dormancy, awakened by the vibrations of the mass drivers. The asteroid's path began to change, not just in the direction the humans intended, but in ways that defied their calculations. And as John Carter dreamed, strange images filled his mind. Stars seen from impossible distances, worlds he had never imagined, and a sense of purpose so vast it made human concerns seem tiny. When he woke, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching him through the walls of the station. The prison was preparing for its inmates. 3 months passed as DC-405 moved through space. The crew of Mining Station Bounty settled into a routine of monitoring the asteroid's progress and preparing for the eventual mining operation. John sat at his control station when the lights flickered for the 3rd time that day. "Power fluctuation in Section 6, Hall reported, checking his instruments. "That's the 5th one this week." "Run a diagnostic," John ordered, but he already knew they wouldn't find anything wrong. These power issues had been happening for weeks, always near the asteroid. Susan Coleman, the station's medical officer, entered the control room. Her face looked tired, with dark circles under her eyes. "John, we need to talk," she said quietly. "It's about the crew." They moved to a corner of the room. "What's wrong?" John asked. "Half the crew is reporting headaches and strange dreams," Susan explained. "2 people had nosebleeds yesterday. Something isn't right here." Before John could respond, Lisa burst into the room. "The crystals," she said, breathing hard. "They're growing faster. And I found something else." "What now?" John asked. "Radio signals," Paul interrupted from his station, "coming from inside the asteroid." Everyone fell silent. "That's impossible," Daniel said, entering the room. His perfect suit now looked wrinkled, his face unshaven. "Rocks don't send radio signals." "This one does," Paul insisted. "And it's not random noise. There's a pattern." Daniel's face hardened. "We need to speed up the mission. Earth wants this asteroid delivered in 6 months, not 12. "Something is happening to this rock," John argued. "We should slow down, not speed up." 2 miners went missing yesterday, Elizabeth Ross, the security chief, said as she joined them. "They were working in the deep shafts. No trace of them." Daniel waved his hand. "They probably got lost. This isn't the time for ghost stories." John made a decision. "I'm going into the asteroid. I need to see what's happening in the central cavern where those signals are coming from." "I'm coming with you," Lisa said. 2 hours later, John, Lisa, and Elizabeth made their way through a narrow tunnel inside DC-405. Their helmet lights cast long shadows on the rock walls. "The signal is stronger here," Lisa said, checking her device. "Just ahead." They entered a large cavern and stopped in shock. The walls glittered with blue crystals, but that wasn't what made them stare. In the center of the cavern stood what looked like a control panel made of a dark metal embedded in the rock floor. "That's not natural," Elizabeth whispered. John approached the panel slowly. As he got closer, lights began to glow beneath its surface. "It's activating," Lisa warned. "Don't touch it." But John felt drawn forward. Something in his mind pulled him toward the strange technology. When he was 3 steps away, a beam of light shot out from the panel and scanned him from head to toe. "John!" Lisa shouted. Before anyone could move, John reached out and touched one of the crystals. Images flooded his mind. Stars, planets, strange beings with too many limbs, and a sense of terrible danger. He saw ships, massive ones, carrying thousands of the beings away from their world. He saw destruction on a scale he couldn't comprehend. He pulled his hand away, gasping. "They're alive," he whispered. "The asteroid. It's a ship." At that moment, the entire station shook violently. Alarms blared throughout the tunnels. "What's happening?" Elizabeth shouted into her radio. Hall's voice came through, filled with panic. "The asteroid. It's moving. It's changed course and picking up speed. We can't stop it." "Get back to the station," John ordered, but even as they turned to leave, the tunnel behind them sealed shut with a wall of crystal. Elizabeth tried to blast through with her weapon, but the crystal merely absorbed the energy. "We're trapped," Lisa said. John touched the wall, and somehow he knew. "No," he said quietly. "We're being taken somewhere. The ship has passengers now." The control room of Mining Station Bounty was chaos. Alarms blared as people rushed between stations. The main screen showed DC-405 moving away from its planned course, accelerating at a rate that shouldn't have been possible. "Get me Earth," Daniel shouted, his face red with anger. "Tell them we're having technical difficulties." Paul tried the communication system again. No response. The signal keeps breaking up. On the screen, Earth was becoming smaller by the minute. The asteroid was pulling the attached mining station along with it, deeper into space. Alan Garcia, the engineer, pointed to the readings on his screen. "The asteroid's mass is increasing." "That's impossible. Nothing about this rock makes sense anymore," Paul replied. Elizabeth's voice came through the radio, breaking up with static. "Carter found. Alien technology. Can't get back. Tunnel sealed." "Alien." Daniel laughed nervously. "That's crazy talk." The station shook violently again. Everyone grabbed onto something to stay upright. "We need to get off this rock," Daniel said. "Prepare the escape pods." 2 hours later, the crew gathered in the docking bay. John, Lisa, and Elizabeth had managed to find another way back to the station. John's eyes looked different somehow, more focused, yet distant. "The escape pods won't work," John said quietly. "How do you know that?" Daniel demanded. "I just know," John replied, touching his temple. Since connecting with the crystal, he felt a presence in his mind, showing him things. "We need to try it," Daniel insisted. Alan stepped forward. "I'll test one pod. If it works, we can all leave." Everyone watched as Alan entered the pod and launched. The small vessel moved away from the station, but when it reached about half a mile from the asteroid's surface, it stopped, then slowly began drifting back. "What's happening?" Susan asked. "It's creating a gravity field," John explained. "It won't let us leave." Lisa stood beside John, watching him carefully. "What else do you know?" John hesitated. "It's old. Very old. Created by beings running from something. I saw glimpses in my mind when I touched the crystal." Daniel's patience snapped. "This is nonsense. I'm taking control of this mission until we can contact Earth." He pulled out a gun, standard issue for corporate liaisons, though rarely seen. "Put that down," Elizabeth said firmly, her hand moving to her own weapon. "Stand aside," Daniel pointed the gun at John. "You're causing panic with this alien talk. We need solutions, not stories." John didn't move. "Shooting me won't change our situation." The lights in the docking bay suddenly brightened, then dimmed. A humming sound filled the air. "What now?" Paul whispered. The floor beneath them vibrated. Several crew members lost their balance. "It's changing," John said. "Adapting." While everyone was distracted, Daniel lunged forward and grabbed Lisa, putting the gun to her head. "I'm taking a pod and leaving. Anyone who tries to stop me will regret it." Elizabeth drew her weapon. "Let her go, Adams." The standoff was interrupted by a strange sight. The metal walls of the station began to shimmer and change color. Small crystal formations sprouted from the corners of the room. "It's inside the station now," Lisa gasped, despite the gun at her head. Daniel's eyes widened in fear. He fired his gun at the crystals. The bullet hit and was simply absorbed, causing the crystal to glow brighter. In his panic, Daniel's grip loosened. Lisa broke free and Elizabeth tackled him to the ground. "Everyone needs to stay calm," John said, his voice strangely commanding. "Violence won't help us." As if responding to his words, the vibrations stopped. The crystal growth paused. "What's happening to the asteroid?" Paul asked, checking his tablet. "Not asteroid," John corrected. "Ship, and it's creating an atmosphere. I think it's preparing for a long journey." "Where is it taking us?" Susan asked, her voice trembling. John looked out the viewport at the stars. "Home," he said. "It's home." 6 months passed. What was once mining station bounty had changed completely. The asteroid had hollowed itself out, creating vast chambers with glowing crystal walls. The air was breathable without suits, Water flowed in streams along carved channels. Strange plants with blue leaves grew in corners where crystal and rock met. John walked through what they now called the central hub, a large cave where most of the crew had set up their living quarters. Some sat on benches made of the same dark metal as the control panel they had first discovered. Others tended to the alien plants that Kevin Murphy, the botanist, had learned to grow for food. "John," Kevin called, waving him over. "Look at this." John approached a table where Kevin had placed several blue fruits. "Another new food." Kevin nodded excitedly. "The ship made these. I just thought about apples this morning, and these appeared in the growing section an hour ago." "It's listening to us," John said. It wasn't a question. Not just listening. Learning. Kevin picked up one of the fruits. "Try it." John bit into the blue fruit. It tasted exactly like an apple, but better somehow. Maria Lopez approached them, carrying a small device she had built from parts of their mining equipment combined with crystal fragments. "The power system is stable now," she said. "I've got lights working in all the living areas." "Good work," John said. 6 months ago, Maria had been a systems engineer. Now she was their expert on adapting alien technology for human use. Elizabeth joined them, her face serious as always. She had taken charge of keeping order among the crew. "We need to talk about Daniel," she said quietly. Daniel Adams had not adjusted well. After his breakdown, he had retreated to a small chamber near the outer wall, refusing to accept their new reality. "Is he eating?" John asked. "Barely," Elizabeth replied. "He still thinks this is all some kind of trick. He's demanding we turn the ship around." "As if we have that control," Maria said with a short laugh. John sighed. "I'll talk to him again." Before he could leave, Lisa hurried into the hub, her eyes bright with excitement. "John, I've finished mapping the inner chambers. You need to see this." John followed Lisa through twisting corridors that seemed to shift and change when not directly observed. They arrived at a room they hadn't been able to open before. Now it stood open, revealing what looked like a star map projected on the ceiling and walls. "It's a navigation room," Lisa said. "And look at this." She pointed to a bright spot on the map. "I think this is where we're heading." John stared at the map. Since touching the crystal, his connection to the ship had grown stronger. Sometimes he saw images or felt emotions that weren't his own. Now, looking at the star map, he felt a sense of purpose. "That's its home system," he said slowly, "or at least where it was told to go." "Told by whom?" Lisa asked. "I don't know yet, but I'm starting to understand more each day." A cry of surprise came from another chamber. John and Lisa rushed to find a group gathered around Susan, who was helping a young woman named Nancy. She was breathing hard, her hands on her swollen belly. "The baby's coming," Susan said. "First one born in space." Hours later, a healthy baby boy was born in a crystal chamber. As his first cries echoed against the walls, the crystals pulsed with light, as if responding. "Look," Maria whispered, pointing to the ceiling. Above them, the rock was shifting, forming what looked like stars and planets. John touched the wall nearest him and felt a surge of emotion that wasn't human, something like joy mixed with hope. "It's celebrating," he said. "The ship, it's happy." "Happy about what?" Elizabeth asked. "New life," John replied. "I think that's what it was made for, to preserve life." That night, as the new mother slept with her child, John stood in the navigation room alone. The star map showed they were moving faster now, approaching that bright destination. Whatever waited for them there, he knew their lives had changed forever. Their prison had become their home, and soon they would discover why they had been chosen. 2 years passed. The ship continued its journey through space. What had once been fear among the crew had turned into curiosity and wonder. They were no longer miners but explorers of an ancient technology. John sat cross-legged in the chamber they called the heart. It was the deepest part of the ship, where the crystals glowed brightest. Here, his connection to the ship felt strongest. He closed his eyes and let his mind drift. Images came to him. Beings with long limbs and large eyes, cities built inside asteroids much like this one, a great fleet escaping a dying star. John. Lisa's voice broke his trance. She stood at the entrance, watching him with concern. "You've been here for hours." "I know who they were," John said softly. "The ones who built this ship." Lisa sat beside him. Over the years, she had become his closest friend and the person who best understood his growing connection to the alien presence. "Tell me," she said. "They called themselves the Shapers. They lived billions of years ago. Their sun was dying. They built these ships, thousands of them, and sent them across the galaxy, looking for new homes." John shook his head. "Looking for partners, other life forms they could help. The ships were programmed to find promising species and join with them." "Join? How?" Before John could answer, Chris Bennett, formerly the station's pilot, rushed into the chamber. "You need to come to the navigation room," he said urgently. "We're approaching a star system." In the navigation room, a crowd had gathered around the star map. The bright point that had been their destination for 2 years was now much larger. "We'll reach it in 3 days," Maria said, checking the readings on her modified equipment. "But that's not all," Chris added. "While testing the communication systems, I picked up a signal. From Earth." A murmur ran through the group. "You made contact with Earth?" Elizabeth asked, surprised. Chris nodded. "It took some work, but yes. And they're in trouble." He activated a recording. A distorted voice came through. "Global catastrophe. Asteroid impact predicted. Evacuation efforts failing. If anyone receives this." "An asteroid is going to hit Earth," Chris explained when the message ended. "A big one. They're trying to evacuate, but there's not enough time or resources." John touched the wall of the navigation room. Images flowed into his mind, clearer now than ever before. "This is why," he whispered. "This is why the ship took us." "What do you mean?" Lisa asked. "The Shapers built these ships to find species worth saving. When we tried to mine this asteroid, it scanned us, found us worthy, and it saved us." "Saved us from what?" Elizabeth asked. "From the same thing that's threatening Earth now," John replied. "The Shapers saw it coming, even billions of years ago. A cycle of asteroid impacts that sweeps through this part of the galaxy every few million years." The room fell silent as everyone processed this information. "So we weren't kidnapped," Kevin said slowly. "We were rescued. And now Earth needs rescuing too," Maria added. John stood up straighter, a new determination in his eyes. "We can help them." "How?" Elizabeth asked. "We're just one ship." "No," John said. "We're much more than that." He placed both hands on the navigation panel. The entire room lit up with new displays, showing technology the crew had never seen before. "The ship has been teaching me, preparing me. All this time, it was showing me how to control its systems." John looked around at the stunned faces of his friends. "This ship can do things we never imagined. It can travel faster than light. It can protect against impacts. It can save Earth." Lisa stared at him. "John, your eyes." He didn't need to look in a mirror to know what she saw. His eyes now glowed with the same blue light as the crystals. "I'm still me," he assured her. "But I'm also something more now. The ship and I are becoming one. And together, we can save our home." The star map shifted, showing a new course, one that would take them back to Earth. "We're going home?" Chris asked. John nodded. "Yes, but first, we need to learn everything we can from what waits for us in this star system. The Shapers left something here for us, something that will help us save everyone." The star system was unlike anything they had seen before. 3 suns orbited each other in a complex dance. Around them circled not planets, but enormous structures, rings, spheres, and lattices of the same crystal material as their ship. "It's a shipyard," John said as they approached the largest structure. Or it was. The crew gathered in the navigation room, watching through a viewing panel that had formed in the wall. The ship slowed as it neared a ring-shaped structure large enough to hold a planet. "Is anyone there?" Elizabeth asked, her hand resting on her weapon out of habit. John shook his head. "No. The Shapers have been gone for billions of years. They left this all behind. Waiting." "Waiting for what?" Lisa asked. "For us, or someone like us." The ship docked with a massive ring. A pathway formed, connecting their ship to the structure. "I need to go in there," John said. "The ship is telling me there's something important inside." "I'm coming with you," Lisa said immediately. "Me too," Maria added. "If there's technology in there, we'll need to understand it." Chris stepped forward. "And me. We'll need a pilot if they have ships in there." John nodded, grateful. Some of the crew still feared him since his eyes had changed, but these three had stood by him. They walked through the crystal pathway. Inside the ring structure, they found a vast chamber filled with smaller vessels, hundreds of them, shaped like teardrops, glowing with the same blue light as their ship. "These are fast travel ships," John explained as knowledge flowed into his mind from the structure itself. "They can jump through space almost instantly." Marriott examined one of the ships with wonder. "With these, we could evacuate thousands from Earth." "Hundreds of thousands," John corrected. "Each one can carry 500 people." A section of the floor suddenly lit up. A hologram appeared, a map of the galaxy with thousands of glowing dots. "What is this?" Lisa asked. "Other Shaper outposts," John said. "Places like this, scattered across the galaxy." He pointed to one particular dot. "This one is near Earth." "So we're not alone?" Chris asked. "There are other ships out there." "Yes, but most are still dormant, waiting to be activated." They spent days exploring the ring structure, learning its secrets. Maria quickly mastered the controls of the smaller ships. Chris found what seemed to be a weapons system, not designed to destroy, but to protect and shield. When they returned to their ship, John called everyone together in the central hub. "We have a plan now," he told the assembled crew. "The ring structure has given us everything we need to save Earth, but we need help." As if in response to his words, a new ship appeared near the ring, similar to their own but larger. From it emerged a small craft heading toward them. "Who is that?" Elizabeth asked, alarmed. John smiled. "Earth found us. They followed our signal." The craft docked with their ship. When the door opened, a man in a military uniform stepped out, followed by armed soldiers. "I'm Major Ryan Peters, United Earth Defense," he announced. "We tracked your transmission. Are you the crew of Mining Station Bounty?" Elizabeth stepped forward. "What's left of us? How did you find us?" "Your message contained coordinates. We've been developing experimental faster-than-light travel. This was our first test." Ryan looked around at the crystal walls. "What is this place?" "It's complicated," John said, stepping into view. Ryan's eyes widened at John's glowing blue eyes. The soldiers raised their weapons. "Stand down," Elizabeth ordered. "He's one of us." "What happened to him?" Ryan demanded. "I've connected with the ship," John explained simply. "And now I can help you save Earth." Ryan looked skeptical. "How?" "We have ships that can evacuate your people, technology that can shield the planet, but we need to work together. Our orders are to secure any alien technology for military use," Ryan said stiffly. John's eyes glowed brighter. "This technology isn't for war, Major. It's for survival. All of humanity's survival. You have a choice to make." The chamber fell silent as Ryan considered. Finally, he lowered his weapon. "Show me what you've got," he said. Earth looked small from space, but the massive asteroid heading toward it looked frighteningly large. John stood on the bridge of the lid ship. Around him, hundreds of the teardrop vessels moved into position around Earth. Each one carried rescued people from the planet's surface. "Evacuation is at 60%, Lisa reported, looking at the display. "We need more time." We don't have it, Ryan said grimly. Impact in 45 minutes. The past month had been a blur of activity. After returning to Earth with the fleet of Shaper vessels, John had to convince world leaders to trust him. His glowing eyes and strange powers had frightened many, but the approaching asteroid had been a stronger motivation. Amanda White, who represented Earth's Emergency Council, appeared on the main screen. John, we've evacuated as many as we can, but billions are still down there. Please tell me your shield will work. John nodded. It will. But I need to complete the link with the other ships. He closed his eyes. Through his connection with the ship, he could feel all the other vessels waiting for his command. The knowledge the Shapers had left behind flowed through him. The ships need to form a net around the planet, John explained, opening his eyes. Each one will project an energy field. Together, they'll create a barrier. And you're sure it will stop the asteroid? Amanda asked. Not stop it, John corrected. Redirect it. We can't destroy something that big. Maria joined them on the bridge. All ships are in position, John. Good. Now we need to activate the network. John placed his hands on the control panel. Blue light spread from his fingers across the surface. On the screens, they could see the other ships beginning to glow. What's happening to him? Ryan asked Lisa quietly. The final connection, she replied. He's becoming one with the entire fleet. John's body began to shimmer with blue light. When he spoke, his voice had a strange echo. The Shapers built these ships to preserve life across the galaxy. They knew the cycle of destruction would continue long after they were gone. 20 minutes to impact, Chris announced from his station. Begin the barrier formation, John commanded. Beams of blue energy shot out from each ship, connecting them in a web around Earth. The energy spread, forming a translucent shield that covered the entire planet. On the surface, people watched in awe as the sky turned blue. Shield at 40%, Maria reported. 50, 60, 15 minutes to impact, Chris said. John's glow intensified. I need more power. You're already at maximum, Lisa told him, worried. No, there's one more source. John closed his eyes again. The original ship. Our asteroid. Their original asteroid ship moved into position above the fleet. It pulsed with energy that flowed down to John, and then out to the shield network. Shield at 80%. 90. 100. Maria shouted. 5 minutes to impact, Chris said. On the main screen, they watched as the destroyer asteroid approached Earth. It hit the blue shield, and immediately began to slow. The shield bent, but didn't break. It's working, Amanda exclaimed. The asteroid's path curved, deflected by the energy shield. Slowly, it moved past Earth, missing it by thousands of miles. Cheers erupted on the bridge and in the control centers on Earth. John's glow faded slightly. He looked tired but smiled. The Shapers would be proud. What now? Ryan asked. We saved Earth, but the evacuation ships are still full of people. Now we build, John said. The Shapers left us all their knowledge. Earth was in danger, but now humanity has been given a gift. The stars. Amanda looked thoughtful on the screen. You mean space travel? Colonies? John nodded. And more. The Shapers evolved beyond their physical forms. They learned to become one with their technology. That path is open to us now, too. Evolution, Lisa said, understanding. Yes, John agreed. What started as our prison has become our future. 6 months later, the first human colony ship left Earth, heading toward a distant star. On its side was a new symbol, a human hand, and a crystal, intertwined. John watched from the original asteroid ship, his form now more energy than flesh. Lisa stood beside him, her eyes beginning to show the first hints of blue light. Are you ready? He asked her. She nodded. I think so. Is it painful? No, John said gently. It feels like waking up. As Earth grew smaller behind them, the ship that had once been their prison carried them toward the next stage of human existence, no longer miners of rock, but shapers of stars.